Woo.
Doing well, you?
Why doesn't that work? You guys think these bulls
You wouldn't have any
wouldn't have
money left for anything else.
Sorry, YouTube just came off mute. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to pull that money back out to send it elsewhere, right?
Correct.
So if we throw all of our money at a loan, it's stuck in the loan. We've got to refinance to get that money back out. So that wouldn't necessarily work. So what can we do? Let's see. Nick's on top of it. He's already put in the chat. You need access to the money in a revolving vehicle, right? This is why we use lines of credit. Now, a line of credit, for example, a HELOC. You know, we use HELOCs. Maeli and I use a HELOC as our operating account for our holdings company that holds all of our rental real estate. All of the income that comes in from our rentals, the gross income, like all of it, hits that HELOC and decreases the amount of debt. That whole pie decreases the amount of debt that we have inside that HELOC, which also holds our debt for all of our long-term real estate held, right? So we're able to use that full chunk to be able to lower the debt. And then when we need to use some of it, when we have utilities we have to pay for, or when we want to make a cash flow distribution to ourselves, that money is liquid inside of the HELOC. When we use a line of credit instead of a loan as a lending instrument, we can pull that money out. Now, I have a lot of people when I say, like, hey, look, use a HELOC instead of a mortgage. People are like, but I have like a 3% interest rate on my mortgage, and HELOCs are at like 7% right now. So why would I want to? I have a much lower rate. Well, remember, this goes back to it's rate over time, right? Because the rate only represents the amount of interest you're going to pay in a year. So if we can attack our whole debt with our whole income every single month and we run the calculation on our calculator, and we figure out, hey, we can pay that off in like 5 years by doing it this way, even at a 7% interest rate, then we're 7% times 5. 7 times 5 is 30. That's a total of 30% interest that we pay on that big chunk of debt, right? Versus a 30-year mortgage at 3% is, what is that? 180%? No, it's 90%, right? It's 90%. So would you rather spend 30% or 90%, right? We have to take the time factor into account. If we can pay it off a lot faster, it's okay to have a little higher interest rate. Interest rates don't pay off debt. Cash flow pays off debt. So if we can increase our cash flow and start using the whole income pie as our tool to continue to pay off debt by consolidating the debt and the income in the same place, the debt and the cash in the same place, we're going to do it a lot faster. And as a factor of that, because interest is a factor of rate over time, if we pay it off faster, we're going to end up spending fewer dollars on interest. So it's not about rate. If you can spend fewer dollars at a 7% rate than you would at a 3% rate, wouldn't you take the 3% or the 7% rate if it's cheaper? If it means fewer dollars out of your pocket, wouldn't we take the 7% rate? The answer is yes. So we focus less on quoted rate. If we can accelerate the time, then that's cheaper anyway, right? We focus more on how can we get more cash flow. Now, I want to share a little bit out of the education here, but again, I apologize to those viewing on YouTube. We went about 15 minutes without any audio from me, so I'm really sorry about that. I was on mute on the YouTube side, but let's open it up to questions. So if any of you have questions, let's dive in and take a look here. What questions do you guys have on that principle that I just shared of consolidating both debt and cash, and how that works, and the vehicles that we use to do that? Any thoughts or comments?
Hey, this is Michelle.
Hey, Michelle, what's up?
Hey. Hey, I just have a thought, and this is from my perspective, and I'm in the financial industry, but I honestly would say, like, if it's anyone's first time joining or second time joining, this seems hard to wrap your head around because it's not what we normally, that's not what we're taught. That's not what we normally think. And so just by, looking into it more, trying to dive into the education, I just strongly recommend it as there's more understanding. So continue to join videos, and those are just my thoughts.
Oh, resounding testimony. I appreciate it, Michelle. Well, likewise, I got to give Michelle a testimony because she just gave me one. When Maeli and I were out trying to find a HELOC to be able to put on this house that we live in, it was frustrating because we don't fit into the normal box that banks like to see. W-2 income, stable job. We're entrepreneurs. We're business owners. Our income fluctuates like this. We make a lot of income, but some months it's zero and some months it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So thank goodness for Michelle. We just, by sheer, luck, ran into Michelle, and she was able to get us a HELOC on this house so we can continue to do this strategy that we've been doing. So love shared right back. Thank you, Michelle. And by the way, guys, if you're looking at doing this strategy, I highly recommend reaching out to Michelle. She's awesome. Okay, well, let's dive in. I want to share a little bit of the education here. So we're gonna be hearing from Tony Scotti today. Tony Scotti teaches the Advanced Velocity Banking class. So within the education, let me share my screen here. So within the education, we we have several classes. We're gonna be hearing from Tony Scotty today, advanced velocity banking. But let me just show you kind of the process here. So inside the essentials, we have our basic velocity banking class. That is taught by Christian George. And Christian goes over some of the more basic principles that we've talked about in the past. I know we're diving in a little bit into the nitty gritty today. But if you want to just operate at a very basic level, this velocity banking strategy, you can still knock years off of your debt pay down, right? And so this is almost a 6-hour class here that Christian teaches inside the education. Now, if we go back to the course library, I'm actually going to go to learning paths here. There are actually a few different places we can find the velocity banking. There's a velocity banking for business. I think it might be in this. Nope. It's financial acceleration. So advanced velocity banking, that's what we're going to be going through today. Passive investing. God, there's like 3 classes on velocity banking and they all kind of go into different areas that we can use velocity banking. So Tony Scotty's class that we're going to be diving into today really dives into how we can use it to go out and increase our real estate holdings, right? The one in Essentials taught by Christian George, that's the basic one. How can we pay off debt? This one that we're going to be going into today is how can we use it to go out and acquire more real estate, right? And then the one that's in the business mastery, I want to say, I'm having a hard time locating it. It goes over how we can use velocity banking for our business, right? So those are all important. Let's see, just for fun, let's pull this up and take a look, because we're actually going to spend, so on this call, obviously we're going to separate it into different weeks, but on this call, we cover velocity banking about once a quarter, and I like to take different aspects to it. Yeah, business and velocity banking. So that's in the profits course, right? So we got one in Essentials, we got one in AIT, and we got one in the profits course. So this one talks about how do we use it on our business, right? If you've got a business that you're running day to day that provides massive income and cash flow to you, velocity banking is a great way to be able to fund your business and gain access to capital while paying off debt fast, right? Obviously, the basic velocity banking is paying off personal debt, and then this applies to how are we going to use it for real estate. So let's dive in. I just want to hit a couple of chapters here. So this is going to kind of drive the point home that we were talking about earlier. Advanced velocity banking, debt, why we refinance, and why we consolidate. So let's dive into Mr. Tony Scotty.
We till debt do us part. So how do we start off when we get into debt? we learn about debt, right? We get some debt and then we decide we want to pay it off. Once you start paying it off, you say, okay, cool. I don't want to be in a situation where
Hey, Mitch, are you
I
sharing
don't have any
sound?
money, so you start creating a reserve. And
Are we
so
just
once
reading the
I had my line of
captions?
credit. I did some real estate investing. I quit my job. My income went down. I started struggling. We ended up, having a hard time. And I realized, gosh, I didn't have my rainy day fund. So the next step after I started paying off my debt was like, hey, I need to create this rainy day fund. And then once I have my rainy day fund, it's hard not to touch it, but do not touch it.
Yes, sir.
It's there, put it aside. If it gets into an emergency, yeah, you're going to get into it, but try not to touch it as best you can. Income went down till debt do us part. So how do we start off when we get into debt? We learn about debt, right? We get some debt and then we decide we want to pay it off. Once you start paying it off, you say, okay, cool. I don't want to be in a situation where I don't have any money, so you start creating a reserve. And so once I had my line of credit. I did some real estate investing. I quit my job. My income went down. I started struggling. We ended up, having a hard time. And I realized, gosh, I didn't have my rainy day fund. So the next step after I started paying off my debt was like, hey, I need to create this rainy day fund. And then once I have my rainy day fund, it's hard not to touch it, but do not touch it. It's there, put it aside. If it gets into an emergency, yeah, you're going to get into it, but try not to touch it as best you can. Now that you have that sitting over there, now it's time to create wealth. Because if I have my rainy day fund and I go out and do a deal and it might happen to have some challenges, at least I have my rainy day fund, right? So it gives me the ability to possibly sleep at night. The deal could go bad or the investment could go bad, but having that rainy day fund or the reserve is very important to me. So you create wealth, and then you get to a point where you simplify the systems. And I'm going to show you where I started from a standpoint of having just one line of credit, and I had that one line of credit, I still have it now, a home equity line of credit, until where I'm at now. And this is kind of the path to get there. But when it comes down to debt, we got to think about why. Why do we want to get rid of debt? Well, of course, it's a cost that we're paying to someone that, you know, they deserve it because we've bought something that was more than we could afford with cash, and we needed to get a loan to do that, right? But we never really look at that in the aspect of maybe we should target that first. And so this chart's very important. And however close this is to reality, we know that 60% of our income, and this is our net income, this is not our gross income, the net that comes in, about 35% of it interest, 5% of it is what's left over at the end of the month. Some of us don't have that 5%. But when we start struggling, what do? We say, okay, let's use the 5%. Let's take that 5%. What are we going to do with that? I'm sorry, when we have that leftover money, what do? We take that leftover money, we start using it, right? So we might try to pay it so we can get, do some investments to get out of the rat race. We might buy a new car. We might look at multiple properties. We might try to get out of debt. Or we might end up, saving a nest egg, 401k, savings plans, right? The problem is that 5%, we're trying to spread it too thin, right? So it's way out there. And if that 5% ends up getting spread too thin, then we end up not getting ahead anywhere. So then what happens is like, okay, we don't have the 5% anymore left over. We have to take a look at the 60%. Now the 60% is where, and we don't do this in my house, honey, you spend too much money. And honey, I know you're probably watching. It's like we always pick on it. It's like, you're spending too much money. We can't go out to dinner. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't do this. So we attack our lifestyle. And that's wrong. We shouldn't attack our lifestyle because why do we go to work? Why do we go out and invest in real estate? To make income so we can enjoy our life, right? And so we don't want to attack our lifestyle. So there's things in our lifestyle like Oreos. Are Oreos important in your lifestyle? In my house, yes, they are. My son, he's got a restriction from Oreos. he eats them for breakfast. I'm like, dude, no Oreos for a month. And he's like, Dad. Sorry, he's a good kid, but I mean. We take a look at, things we go out and we do. And then this is for Scott Rowe. If you have special hobbies, this is, Sasquatch. He has a hobby of hiking. So, Scott, thank you for everything you've taught me. So why do we attack the 60%? Because we never really think about the other portion, that's the 35%. So let's go to the 35%, let's start attacking that. And the 35% consists of these normal things. There's home loans, school loans, car loans, credit card bills, and maybe small business debt that we have. So we're going to attack that 35%. Is that better? And the reason that we're attacking the 35% is because no one really teaches us to attack the 35%. In school, right? But here we're going to do that. So what if we could reduce our interest costs in everything we do with a simple change in the way that we handle our income and expenses? Those of you who understand this strategy and have been practicing it, it's just a simple change. We're just doing something a little bit differently. It's not really, really crazy. It's not a gigantic change in what we're doing. It's just we're going to move our money and handle it a little bit differently. So in order to explain that, we got to get into an example. So the question is, how many of you are going to buy a house? Okay, you guys are real estate investors. How many are not raising your hand? Okay, we're going to buy a house, right? And so I went and looked at what the average basically house cost is across the country, and I did that as early as last week, and it's about $200,000, little 209 or something like that, and that's the average. Now, Hawaii's average right now, the average 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I think is $750. Utah, I'm not sure what your average house is here, but to use a number across the country, about 200,000 is a good number. So we're going to use an example of 200,000. And this is the example we're going to use throughout the class in regards to a mortgage. So $200,000, the payment is $1,200. 6% interest. $4,000 is what comes in, that's net, that's our net income. $2,200 is taken out, that's our groceries, our living expenses, our fund, and everything besides the mortgage debt. So it might be some school loans and things like that in there. And then there's $600 left over. So the net income, what's left over is $600. That's a key. So write that down. That $600 is a number that's the most important thing. That's why I talk about passive income strategies, because that passive income or net, what's left over. In this case, it's active net income. So when in a real estate transaction, it's passive income. The line of credit is a $10,000 line of credit with a 9% interest rate, and the balance is zero. Now you'll notice the line of credit is at 9% and the mortgage is at 6%. And I'm going to show you the math behind that, why that 9% line of credit is going to be a tool for what we're trying to achieve. So let's look at this loan and amortization table. An amortization table, if you guys haven't done it yet, we're going to do it in a second here. You can go to Excel and you can go to download a form, and you can type in amortization, and there's a bunch of amortization tests, maybe 3 or 4 you might get online. The one that's on there, you want to try to get one that allows you to put in an extra payment, right? And in a little bit, we're going to have you do that, but I want you to go ahead and realize it's easy to get an amortization table. You cannot run the numbers with this process unless you have an amortization table and a daily interest calculator. That's what really, I should say you can, but those are the tools that I use to make it happen. Does that make sense? Cool, so an amortization table, in this case the payment's $1,200. $198 goes towards what we purchased. $1,000 goes towards the interest, and the total interest that we pay over the life of the loan is $232,000. So from a standpoint of a $200,000 house, $232,000 comes in. The combined cost for that house over 30 years is $432,000. Is that fair? Yes. We didn't have $200,000 in cash. We have to use that. They're a bank. They make money. And it's not right. We should try to learn some different things, and that's what we're gonna talk about today, is how to attack it. So sorry, I know it's not right. I just have to be nice. Is any bankers in the room? Okay, good. Any comedians? I might need some help after the break. So that's our plan. So this is what we traditionally sign up for. The truth in lending statement, all the information we get is there, and it shows this to us. It's buried sometimes, but this is what happens. So this is what the 30-year plan looks like in a amortization table picture, right? So the green part is the principal portion. The red part is the interest part, right? So the interest is there. And if
I just want to pause real quick right here, because we're going to talk about, he's going to bring this up in another chapter we're going to watch. And he refers to this as the red zone. So keep in mind, this is what his amortization table example looks like. We're going to talk about how to attack this red zone in just a little while. But I wanted to bring that up so that stood out to you. Keep that in mind.
you go back and you look about the halfway point at 15 years, it looks like we're still paying a lot more to interest than we are to principal. So the halfway point in this example is about 19 years out. Now, with lower interest rates, 15-year loans, all that changes. And that's what I'm going to show you guys in the amortization table. You can go in there and you can calculate that, kind of see where things are. So if you take a look at that payment, and this is important that we point this out, it's 6% interest. However, in the front end of the mortgage, 83% of the payment in this example is interest, right? If we paid our house off by the end, that would flop, right? By 30 years, it reverses, and eventually 100% or 90% or 98% of your payment that goes to the last payment is going to be principal and only a little bit interest. But up front is where it's at. The challenge is that upfront area, because we get stuck in the red zone in the beginning. We get stuck in the front. And why do we get stuck in the front? Because we like football. But what happens is things get in our way, right? Things get in our way, so we get started in paying off our mortgage off, and what do? We refinance, right? We refinance. Why do we refinance? To lower our monthly payment. Because it's like, okay, we're going to save some money. Because interest rates are low, and the marketing's out there to say, hey, we should do it, and it makes sense to us. We run the numbers, and it's going to make sense. Sometimes it's easier to understand than what I'm teaching you today. Sometimes we refinance to get cash out. Now, that is not always bad. But we're going to talk about refinance cash out here as a way to access your equity once you start using this process. and we're going to save on our total interest paid. Sometimes we refinance to do that. So maybe we go from a 30-year to a 15-year. So there's lots of reasons why we do it, but the problem is we end up jumping back into the front end of that loan, right? Or we might do it to get a shorter loan term. Another thing we might do is debt consolidation, right? So we might have our mortgage, we might have our school loan, credit cards. We might have, other credit cards out there. I'm sorry, personal lines, HELOCs, other things. We just jump it all and we put it all into one, right? We jump it all into one for almost the same reasons. Lower monthly payment, one simple payment, because the interest rates are lower. Because a credit card's 19%, and we get a home loan at 4.5%. We just put everything in there. And sometimes it's easier to understand because that's what we're taught, and the industry's out there sharing that with us, right? So now we're going to do a little breakout session. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead, and if you have a laptop or if you have access to a computer, I want you to go into Microsoft Excel. I don't know that there's Lotus. Anybody have Lotus on their computer still? That's what I learned. I learned in Lotus 1, 2, 3, and this Excel thing came out. That's how old I am. So we're going to talk about loan amortization. I want to share some examples on how to do that, right? We're going to look at where the 50% point is. What the halfway, I'm sorry, that's the same thing. The halfway point and the 50% point. So this is a double slide. 3 o'clock in the morning does me well. The total interest at different interest rates, and then try to find a credit card calculator, and so you can understand how a credit card works. So find an amortization calculator, and if you don't have a computer, try to find this app. It's called Easy Calculators. Okay? So with that being said, can we take a little 5-minute break? And we're going to get into that and get those Excel spreadsheets, and I'm going to give you some numbers to run.
Okay, so we're gonna dive into the next chapter real quick here, where he kind of goes into the amortization table. Excuse me, and he shows why paying off debt at an accelerated rate is actually, it kind of compounds on itself. Like every time you make, every time you compound in your cash flow, it cuts an increasing amount of time off the back end of that mortgage. So I want to jump into this next chapter. We're going to watch this, and then we're going to watch one more short chapter, and then we're going to talk about it, and we'll get into questions.
What we'll do is we're going to take the 30-year loan. We have a $500,000 mortgage, a $350,000 mortgage, a $200,000 mortgage, and then we have a 15-year loan with the same balances, a 5% interest rate, a 4% interest rate. On this side, we have a 6, a 5, and a 4. So the idea is in the first box, we're going to take a $500,000 balance. We use 30 years at 6%. Okay? Then the next box is going to be $350,000, 30 years at 6%. $200,000, 30 years at 6%. Same thing if you work down, and we're going to fill this whole thing out.
So what are we putting in the box? The amount of time?
I'm sorry, the amount of interest. That would be a good thing. I would tell you how much interest you're going to pay.
The total interest. Thank you.
Sorry. So when you fill out that 30-year loan, it's going to tell you what the payment is, but I want you to show the interest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the answers now. So those of you at home, you've done this practice, push pause right now, and then once you're done filling out the numbers, don't cheat. Here's the answers. So the key thing here is that $500,000 at 6% is going to cost you $580,000. A 30-year loan of $350,000 is going to cost you $405,000. A $200,000 30-year.
By the way, this is just the cost of interest. So not only are you paying back the $500,000 principal at 6%, you're paying an additional $580,000 in interest. So the total you'll pay back on your $500,000 borrowed over 30 years is $1,080,348. So keep that in mind as we're watching this.
Loan at 6% is going to cost you $231,000. And the reason there's so many here is just to give you an idea of kind of how to run the amortization calculator so you can figure out the interest. Because this is important. This is one of the components in that velocity backward formula. You got to know what the interest is on the loan that you have or where you started. And down at the bottom, the 5%, $500,000 at 15 years is only $211,000. Does that make sense? Yes,
Just to clarify, that's just the interest.
that's just the interest.
Okay.
Yeah. If you take the number at the top, the 500,000, and you add it to the 580, that would be the total cost of the house over the time.
Okay.
Now, this is something new, but the key thing here is if you run through this and you do enough of these, you're going to understand that when you get a loan, you can run the amortization table and calculate it. And that's the key. That's what's important. Okay? So now that you've done that, the purpose of this is to learn how to run an amortization table to get the numbers. The next step we're going to do is I'm going to do the same idea, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into this with the same idea with the concept of debt consolidation now. So those of you who have a calculator, let me ask somebody here. 6%, 30 years, $50,000. We just went out and we took a car loan and a student loan and we refinanced it and consolidated it into our mortgage. The cost of that total debt that we had was $50,000. We just put it in our 30-year loan. So how much would it cost, now that you understand how to do this, for that 6%, $50,000 at 30 years? Anybody? $57,900. Okay? The idea is now you've taken that $50,000 and you've added it to a 30-year loan, which ends up adding more interest to your life and things like that. Now, debt consolidation could be important. It could be necessary, but if you do it with a strategy and with a path, at least you know how to calculate the interest when you do that. So, same example. So right now we're going to pause at home. If you're here, we're going to pause at home, go through the process, fill this whole spreadsheet out, and it might take some time because this is a workshop. Once you fill it out, turn the video back on. And here's the answers. So you're 58, I'm 58, you're 57. I use a French amortization table. I'm not sure why the number is off in that case. I have to double check, and we'll double check those numbers. We'll get the slide corrected for the class. So the idea here is that what I did is I just showed you how to calculate amortization of your house and then amortization if you decide to consolidate your debt into your house. So let's just say we have $10,000 in credit card bills, and we put it into our 30-year loan. It costs us $11,000, so we basically doubled that cost. Now, sometimes we need to do this, like I said earlier, but the idea is you need to be able to run the numbers to see how it's going to work, right? And if it does free up cash flow and it does make things a little easier for you, you might be able to do that after today and understand it a little bit better. Because the velocity banking factor will allow you to run those numbers. And maybe we'll do an example later on that. Any questions about that? The reason I put that in there is to confuse everybody. No, the idea is that you got to learn how to run that, because that's what I did when I first started teaching this, is I would just run numbers after run numbers after I run numbers and after I run numbers until you get the amortizations. For some of you, this is simple. For me, it was a little complicated because I didn't have any financial background. I made ice cream, okay? I knew what vanilla was. I could taste 7 different vanillas. I love it. I knew what Madagascar vanilla was, Mexican vanilla. I knew what imitation vanilla was, but I didn't understand the math, so I had to learn how to do it. So those of you who are new, learning the math.
Okay, so what did he do in this chapter? What did he do that most of us don't do when we're looking at a mortgage?
Calculate the difference between the interest rate. I mean, how the interest rate affects the long-term payment.
He calculated the actual amount of interest paid. And I think that's the mistake that most people make when they're selecting bank products, is they just look at the rate. They look at the face value of, well, my 3% mortgage, 3 is a lower number than 7% on a HELOC, right? 3 versus 7, I'm going to take the 3. That's cheaper. Is it really cheaper? Well, and that's what we need to figure out, right? Because sometimes there could be a big enough disparity. If you're at 29% on your line of credit and you're at 2% on your loan, it may actually be cheaper for you to stay in the loan. I don't know. But the point is that we never were taught to do the math all the way out. And that's what Tony teaches in this segment, is let's do the long form math and actually calculate how much we're in dollars we are going to pay over that period of time, right? And that's what we need to compare. So I think I heard, was that Charlotte that had a question?
Yeah, I just, so to start off the conversation, speed banking changed my life. I mean, I love speed banking. That being said, I have an issue with the mortgage information and how it's presented because it's just interest. And the reason why you're paying more interest at the beginning is because the balance is higher. So you have more of their money. You have more of their money, so you're paying them more interest because you have more of their money.
That's true.
And so it's not anything the banks are doing that's deceitful or
it's not naughty.
You're not paying. No, it's simple. It's just a number. And it's the same number at the beginning of the mortgage as it is at the end of the mortgage. It's just that you have more of their money. And
Absolutely.
so, like, right now, the interest rates are going up, and my lines of credit are, the one I have at the brokerage account is extremely high. The one that I have at the, in relationship to what it was when I started, the one that I have with the union is still considered, considered to everything else is pretty low, but the mortgages are lower. So there is no reason why I would to pay off my mortgages faster when the interest rates, the trend is going up. And I could take those payments, like the extra payments you're talking about, and turn them into investments that might make more than the interest that I'm paying on the mortgage. So, it's a big difference if you're talking about credit cards where you're paying, 23% interest. Those are the things that, like a couple of guests ago that you had of, getting the transfers and the 0% rates that they have. That's a strategy that would be better.
Yeah.
But as far as paying down a mortgage, I can't see in this day and time where you're going to be able to get any cheaper money than that. And so even what we have currently, like if you had gotten mortgages over the last 10 years, that's going to be any less. So I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with it, but money's money, and it doesn't really matter how much over the life of the mortgage that you're going to pay. If you could turn around and use that money and make more money as an investment than you're paying on the mortgage interest.
Right.
And right now, actually, some people can actually go out and put it into a safe, something that's like you have a 4% interest rate on your mortgage. There's some CDs that you can get that are, high, some of the online banks that have interest rates that they're paying on the accounts that are higher than that. So why would you pay down a mortgage when your interest rate's low when you can go out and get more money from somewhere else with that same paid down money? You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that breaks down, and you have a good point, and it comes down to doing the long form of the math, right? If I can pay off a 30-year mortgage that's going to cost me $500,000 to carry for 30 years, even if it's a lower rate, but I can pay it off faster with a 7-year HELOC, I can pay it off in 5 years. It's the rate over time. But the point you're making, which I like, is if I can utilize that line of credit, just kind of let the mortgage do its thing and maybe chunk it down a little bit. But if I can use the line of credit to go out and make an investment that might yield 10 or 15 or 20% interest, aren't I better to do that? And the answer is yes, right? But it's the long form math. It's actually calculating out how much we're going to be spending in interest, how much we're going to be making on an investment.
Well, but you have to concurrently do the long form math for what you could be earning on the money that you're paying it down with.
Right. And
so
then
you
comparing
do the long
apples to
form
apples.
math with what you. Yeah.
When you compare rates, and I think that's the point here, is when you compare rates, you're not necessarily always comparing apples to apples. Often when I'm explaining this as a new concept to people, I use the example of Celsius versus Fahrenheit, right? What's the freezing point of fresh water at sea level? Is it 32? And people will say yes or no, right? Well, and then say Celsius, oh, well, we hid the unit of measure from you. Well, 1 degree Celsius, or excuse me, 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Fahrenheit are the same temperature. That's the freezing point of freshwater sea level. If I raise that 0% Celsius to 1, 1's actually hotter than 32. 1 degree Celsius is hotter than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So we can't just go off of, if we're just comparing rates, right, using that analogy, if we're just comparing rates, we're not always comparing apples to apples. What we need to compare is the cash expenditure or the cash income that come from the different opportunities, right? Whether it's paying it off faster using a different vehicle, or whether it's going out and making an investment that's going to yield more than we would actually spend in interest using that line of credit. So it's that is, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that just kind of drives the point home. That is how we compare apples to apples here, is extrapolating it out to the actual cash outlay. And that's what we compare. I love it. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay. So on that note, and I think that was the perfect transition into how do we attack that red zone? How do we attack that part of the amortization table where we're paying mostly interest? And that's what really gives us an advantage in velocity banking over an amortized loan, is that we can attack it with the power of all of our income versus just kind of making some extra payments to kick the can down the road, right? So he's going to dive into a little bit on that in this section. And then we're also going to talk about, what happens if we don't have any cash flow. Because velocity banking is driven by cash flow, not by interest rates, right? So how do we make this work for us if we don't have any cash flow? He's going to attack a little bit of that. We're going to go through this one last chapter, then we're going to open it up and talk a little bit about it, and we'll take comments and questions. So let's dive in.
So now we attack the red zone. This is what happens. The $3,000, that's where the $14,000 is. We cut out that red zone, right? So we cut out the front end. And the 15 months is saved on the backside. That's the idea, okay? Now, problem number 2, how fast can we pay off the $3,000? So at $22 a month, we can try to find out how fast we need to pay it off to break even. If we save $14,000, we divide it by 14,000. I'm sorry, if we save 14,000 and we divide it by $22 a month, if we can pay that line of credit off in less than 54 years, we're okay. That wasn't even supposed to be funny. So,
just for some context here, he's talking about a $3,000 credit card that if you paid the minimum payment, how much interest would you pay until you pay it off? It's about $14,000 that he's calculated is what it would cost in interest to pay that off on a high interest credit card. So now he's calculating it into an amortization schedule, and then how can we pay that off using a larger line of credit like a HELOC.
Do you think you can pay it off in a year? 5 years? 10 years? Even if you pay it off, it takes a little while, because sometimes it takes a while to pay off that. You still can get it done, right? There's a way to pay it off quicker with a minimal change in your monthly budget. That $22, that's too much for me. That's too much. I'm going to try to reduce that down. You guys have a company out here, Starbucks, right? Hey, we used to call them $7. Sorry, that's a joke. Starbucks is our coffee bean. It can be any coffee company. So McDonald's is $1 coffee, though. Anyway, so we're going to try to cut it down to $7. And the way we can do that is by using 100% of our income, right? So remember we have our cash flow, the $600 in cash flow. If we take that $600, right, and we leave it in our line of credit, so we take our full income, we deposit in the line of credit, our paychecks that come in, and we put it in there, and there's $600 left over. The balance is $3,000 when we start. The next month, the balance will be $2,400, right? And if we leave it again the next month, the balance will drop down to $1,800. And what happens if I need that $600 to go take care of something? Can I get access to it? So cool. So that's that flow of money again, right? Okay, what happens? I don't have any cash flow. If I don't have any cash flow and I'm doing this, would you still do the transfer? $14,000 in savings. You got to figure out a way to pay it off. If you don't have $22, you got to figure out a way. The way is this. Traditionally, get a job. That's mean, because that's what I used to say. Stop spending, right? That's where you got to look at the groceries and maybe, how many times you go out to dinner. Work more hours. Who wants to work more hours? But you guys are entrepreneurs. You're not as students. We do it this way. Non-traditional. I was watching some videos this morning that I was going to put in one from Office Space. And he says, yeah, I'm just going to quit my job. When did you decide that? Oh, about an hour ago. Are you going to go quit? No, I'm just going to stop going. So pretty funny. But, I quit my job, and that's a whole other story. So non-traditional, what do we do as entrepreneurs and as we're not as students, right? We're going to start a small business, right? And if we start a small business, we can learn how to pay less taxes. And what I'm showing you is how to pay less interest. And maybe increase your other currencies, because if you increase your other currencies by growing your network or by finding time to go out and look for deals, can you find that extra money? Yes, and you can grow. And so that extra $23 is not a whole lot, but maybe the 600 is your number. Maybe it's 1,000. Whatever that number happens to be for you, this is the way we do it as an entrepreneur. We don't do the top part, right? Get the tools, the debt transfer, reduce interest. Any questions about the debt transfer, right? And the interest savings and the cost of that line of credit. You guys understand the flow, right? Now 100% of our money is going to come in. We're going to put it in our line of credit. We're going to leave it there as long as we possibly can. And if we need it, we're going to take it out to go pay for things. Otherwise, we leave it there. And it reduces the balance. Eventually, it's paid off. In about 5 months, that 600 would pay off that 3,000. What would we do? We'd do it again. Question?
Yeah, I just got a question, Tony. When you do the first sweep, the chunk, whatever you want to call it, does the bank actually recalibrate the interest for the new amount of debt? I've heard it both ways. Is that something we need to check on with the bank individually? Like if I put a $10,000 chunk on a $200,000 mortgage, is the bank going to automatically the next month recalibrate my interest to the 190, or is it going to stay on that old amortization schedule?
The question, or the answer is, in the loan, it's all dependent upon the loan. If it's an interest-only loan, then now you've dropped down the balance, and you're going to pay the interest-only portion. If it's an amortized loan, you drop down however many payments is, your payment stays $1,200. In this example, it dropped down to $1,200, still a $1,200 payment. We're making, instead of getting $198, we're getting $213. So the adjustment is in the actual payment that comes out.
Okay, thanks.
So let's fast forward the timeline for a second and say we're on year 20, where we're more in the green zone. Does it still make sense to do these chunks? Will it still save you money when you're at that point in your amortized loan?
The answer is it's up to you, and we're going to talk a lot about that later as far as whether you pay off or grow. But the idea is if you have an amortization table, run the numbers. Because for some people, when they get that down the road, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to pay an extra, I'm only paying a little bit of interest. Hey, I'm going to take that money, I'm going to go invest it. I'm going to do something with it. That make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Question?
One thing I do as a marking tool is I have them pull out their latest payment stub, and I have them divide the principal by the interest and show them what their effective interest is at that moment in their loan, so they can see what they're actually paying. One lady was shocked to find after 10 years, she's still paying 49% interest on her loan.
Okay, that's cool. Well, and I want to correct that a little bit, because what we can get into that, and we're really not paying 49% interest. She's 49% of the payment is interest. That's why, as we get and evolve this, the velocity banking factor it's still, a large percentage. She's stuck in the red zone. She's stuck in a zone where it's still a lot of the payment. And that's where when you run the numbers and you can plug it in there. But be very cautious in telling them they're paying 49% interest, because that's not the truth. The truth is 49% of the payment is interest. That make sense? But yeah, it's very evident. That's what you look at. When you look at an amortization loan, you can look at your loan, you look at your own loan and see that in there. And you can see how much of your loan is interest. And sometimes it's very frustrating. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, let's build some equity now. Let's reduce the interest. Here's our velocity banking factor. Remember, we take the projected interest over the original interest divided by 100. And in this example, we pay no interest. So we have a credit card, right? It has a $3,000 balance. We ran up that balance that month, right? And we pay the credit card off in full. Simple, fundamental thing. What is our interest rate?
0.
No, it's 19%, right? It's 19%. How much interest did we pay? 0. See the difference? And so what is our velocity banking factor? Take the total interest you were going to pay, whatever number it happens to be, and how much are you paying? It's 0. So here's how it looks. When you calculate it out, $3,000 and 19% interest for a month is about $48. 0, so therefore our velocity banking factor, or our interest that we're going to pay, is zero interest. Make sense? It's kind of a different terminology, right? But we can't quote interest rates. We can't say we're paying 2% and it's a 19% credit card. And especially when we're communicating this, and if you happen to talk to people and when you're working with your friends and your business partners. So the cost of interest can reduce by 100% of your income as velocity towards the debt. My friend Mitch loves to talk about this, using cash as velocity to pay down your debt. Here's what it looks like. Here's the breakout session. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to break off to Excel, and I might need a little bit of help. So why don't we take about a 5-minute, I'm going to jump in and I have to load up an Excel spreadsheet, and then I'm going to show you a daily interest calculator. I did the research. I went out there and tried to find one. I couldn't find one, so that's part of your homework. So part of your homework is to find a daily interest calculator. So real quick, going to take 2 minutes. I'm going to dig in here and try to get this spreadsheet up here, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so here is a daily interest calculator. So in this case, the example here is let's put in our $3,000 balance, right? And we are at 9% interest. So see the $22.93? Remember I showed you the 74 cents a day? So 74 cents a day, and there's 31 days. In this calculator it is. And I use 31 no matter what, because if you want to do the right calculator, the way that banks calculate them, sometimes they do it on 30 days in a month. It's all different weird. But I go, for what I do, the basic projections, I just try to use 31 days for everything. If it's a February, then great. I don't have to pay as much interest that month. But the idea is that this is a daily interest. And basically what it's doing is it's taking this balance, for those of you who know how to write Excel spreadsheets, it's taking the $3,000 balance, multiplying it times 9%, divided by 365, and that's where the 74 cents comes. Make sense? In order to cut this down, if we deposited our check, let's just say our check came in on the 2nd. I mean, of course, if you're Renata's, your checks come in 2 days, Tuesdays and Fridays, right? But in this case, we're getting one twice a month. We're back in our W-2 world at this point. So I'm going to go ahead up here, and I had my income came in over here. And if you just want to do a simple one, you can do minus for income, plus for income and minus for debt. But this one does the calculations for me. So I'm going to put in my $2,000 came in, right? And then I had to pay my mortgage. You notice the balance dropped on the graph? If I didn't have any bills, did I save more? Did I save the $22, more than the $22? If I put $2,000 in there, I end up only paying $8 versus $22. Does that make sense? You see it? See the balance, the interest cost? Now I'm going to make my mortgage payment on the 4th, $1,200. I don't care how much is interest or principal, I made it. See how the balance came back up? Then I did a good thing. I paid all my bills and everything with a credit card, and I'm going to use that credit card and pay it off once a month. And let's just say that credit card is due around the 13th or so. And that credit card bill, groceries and everything, was $2,200, right? It dropped the balance too low. It dropped it below 0. Or it dropped actually to 0. Okay, but then I had a paycheck. Oh, I'm sorry, I just made an income. That's why I goofed. It's over here, living expenses, $2,200. Went the wrong way. Delete. I did design this spreadsheet, by the way. So now we have our other paycheck that comes in at $2,000. I was sick a week. Okay, so the idea here is I have my $2,000 paycheck come in, I paid my mortgage, then I paid my expenses, and my $2,000 second paycheck came in, and I end up reducing my interest from 22 down to 18. The balance went from 3,000 down from 3,000 down to 2,400. You guys follow? Okay, if you have to, pause it and look at the spreadsheet and see this. And I'm trying not to go too fast on it. But the idea in this case is that just like happened in the middle of the month, but I didn't optimize it. So how would I optimize it? Let's just say my credit card wasn't due on the 13th and I set it up to where it was due closer to the end of the month. And I paid my credit card down here at $2,200. Now I pay $9 versus $22. Does that make sense? If you look at this graph, I'm drawing on it. Oh, there it is. I can draw on it. I'm drawing on the graph. See the graph here? All this area up here that I'm not drawing very good with? That's interest you don't have to pay. That's French. You don't have to pay. You see the idea? Is that the longer you leave your income in the line of credit, the less interest you're going to have to pay. So instead of paying $9 that month, instead of paying $22, I only paid $9.
If you're out of the red zone.
Dang it. Sorry, YouTube. I forgot to unmute again. Anyway, velocity banking is great. That's what I was trying to say. I really got to get in the habit. I'm sorry, YouTube. This is streaming still a little bit new to me, so I will get better at this. I promise. But I want to open this up to questions and comments and thoughts. So let's open it up. Any comments? Any thoughts? Any questions? The time is yours. We can dive into as many things as you want to in the next 16 minutes. And let's talk about some of these more advanced nuances of velocity banking. Time is yours, my friends. Let's do it.
I have
Go
ahead.
Oh, thank you. No, it's just a quick story to relate to you. My brother, who you know, Scott, was talking to a vice president of a credit union here locally, and was talking about some of these velocity banking and some of these concepts, and she had no idea what he was talking about. And she was going to a Renatus meeting, and she wanted to know why her company didn't train her about any of this, and she was a VP for the company. So I found it fascinating that we're talking about it now and thinking about this lady whose entire career is in the financial institution, and she just was not exposed to that way of thinking.
Not trained on it. I mean, yeah, look, and again, back to kind of the comment that Charlotte made. The banks aren't doing. It's not that they're evil, and they're not trying to attack us. They're being capitalists, just like we are as real estate investors. We're being capitalists, right? We want to make as much as we can on a deal, and there's certain things that cross our ethical boundaries. But if it doesn't cross that ethical boundary, we're gonna keep that money for us, because this is why we do it, right? We do it to make money. So that's exactly how the banks are behaving. They have products that are going to make them more money. They're going to push those products, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine that they do it. What's not fine is that you're not taking the time to educate yourself. You're not taking the time to decide if that's what's best for you, right? And to do that math. And that's really what increased knowledge is going to allow you to do. Is it's going to allow you to assess in regards to velocity banking, on the subject of velocity banking, is going to allow you and enable you to assess not just what you're being told by a salesperson, right? But what you are actually going to be paid. And look, if I ran a sales team, if I was the top CEO of a bank and I knew about this strategy, I probably wouldn't train my people on it either. Because I'm gonna make a heck of a lot less money if I train my army on that, right? So yeah, I don't blame them. I train them on what I want them to do, and that's sell the stuff that's gonna make me money, right? So exactly. It's up to us to be educated. It's up to us to be smart, and that's why we do this. That's why we have this call. That's why we offer coaching and education and all these things, is because I think there's value in going out and being intelligent as we operate in this world. Money will follow if we operate intelligently, right?
True.
Thank you for your share, Tim. I saw Charlotte came off mute. Charlotte, did you have a comment or a question?
Well, yeah, just on some of the things that you charge every month. That, I mean, I use this all the time, but also sometimes the consideration is that the bills that you're paying, they charge you to charge it. So there's like a convenience fee.
Sure.
So, sometimes that's a large percentage, like it's a one-time large percentage. Like you're paying a $100 bill and you're paying, $295 as a convenience fee. That's 3% in 1 month that you're paying. So,
don't do that.
3 times 12, that's 36% that you're paying as a convenience fee. So that's not going to be
right.
That's not going to be countered by any kind of savings that you have on the other end. So, charge doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to actually save dollars.
And to that point, we have to be smart about the products we're using, right? Like if we have a card, I know Wells Fargo has a card like that. I'm not
talking about the card. I'm talking about for me, it's the utilities. So, in my
using a card.
the
Yep.
gas prices went crazy this month, and this year, and so I had like a 1 month for our youth program. I had like a $2,800 gas bill,
Yeah.
but they won't let you charge more than $500 on any one charge, and then they charge you $2 or $3 for every single charge. So because of the way we do it, I have to charge it, but it still adds up to a significant. If you're just talking numbers and you're talking percentages, it does add up. Especially if maybe the month the bill was really low and it was $70, and like it is sometimes during the summer, then you're still paying that convenience fee, and so the percentage is actually pretty high.
Yeah.
And that's not from the credit card company, that's from
It's from the utility company. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because there are some cities here that do that, right? And I work in a lot of the cities in Utah. I own real estate all over the state, all over the country. And some cities do that. Some power companies do that. Some gas companies do that. And you know what? That's where we got to start getting creative with this, right? Like, maybe at that point we're just, this is hypothetical, of course, but maybe at that point we're just transferring a little bit of cash out of the HELOC into the checking account, writing a check and sending it off, or doing a transfer. Point being, be cognizant of these things. I love that you're identifying those types of nuances, Charlotte, because all too often I see people just kind of broad stroke and be like, Mitch said velocity banking's better, so that's what we're doing, and they end up making decisions that actually hurt them, right? And I'm not saying just go out and blindly do velocity banking. What I'm saying is do what Charlotte's doing. Like, make sure that you're paying attention to the nuances of what you're doing. Do the math. Keep track of it. Do the spreadsheets. How many times did Tony say, I made a spreadsheet for this, right? Do the spreadsheets. Like, do the math on it. And then make sure that you're setting up a system. And look, this isn't saying that you're spending every month, all month in spreadsheets, right? You should only have to do all this once. Look at your situation, set up a system for it, look at all your bills, make sure you understand which ones are going to charge you those convenience fees, make sure you understand which ones, are going to allow you to push it to the end of the month so you can take advantage of that extra timing that he talked about in the end of the last chapter. Make sure you're understanding all these things. Set that up once, put it all in a spreadsheet, and then run that system every month. It actually should be easier. It actually should become an easier thing. It does take a little extra work at the beginning to set it up, setting up the system. But just like any business system, it takes a little extra work at the beginning to set it up. And then as you run that month after month, the whole point of it is that it saves you time in the long run, right? So, and in the case of velocity banking, it should be saving you money in the long run as well, right? I love the thought. Thank you, Charlotte. Any other questions or comments? Guys, we shared like 3 chapters. Just want to point out, like, this is such incredible stuff. We shared 3 chapters out of a class. Let's just jump back in here. We shared 3 chapters out of a class that's 6 hours long, right? Has about 40 chapters in it. And there's 3 classes with about 40 chapters each, right? So if we go in and look, like, 39, about 40 chapters per class, right? So just the little bit of amount of knowledge that we learned in those 3 chapters. Think of what, the incredible amount of knowledge that we can get from just increasing the amount of knowledge that we have. Increasing your knowledge has to become a part of your everyday. There's a reason why when I wrote my book, I talked about how, the 5 currencies of the wealthy, the second currency that I found that the wealthy mindset individual valued second above all the others was knowledge. They spend their time is their most valuable thing, and what they spend that currency on is the acquisition of knowledge. When knowledge increases, behavior changes. Knowledge should be the acquisition of knowledge should be what we spend our time currency on. It should be the no-brainer thing, right? and if we're going to spend our most valuable currency on it, well then, we better be using our relationships and our credit and our money to acquire knowledge as well, because they're less valuable currencies, right? The more we can fill our minds and our brains with strategies that are going to help us be successful financially, the more financially successful we will become. I know that sounds silly, and I remember a time in my life when I was like looking at these wealthy people thinking that it was some sort of magic, right? Like you had to be born wealthy. It was genetic, right? It was just some sort of like thing that they did that I didn't have any access to. All it is understanding. All it is knowledge. If you want to change your situation, if you're struggling and you want to get into a better situation, if you're aspiring for more in life, if you're trying to reach that next level, all it is knowledge. And that's a journey that never ends. There's not a destination to that. There will never be a time when you're like, oh, I know everything now, right? I'm an expert at all the things. You should always be learning more about whatever it is. And look, even if we're just talking about real estate, business ownership, and financial knowledge, you could fill a lifetime of learning and still only scratch the surface. It's incredible stuff. If your desire is to become wealthy and create generational wealth for yourself, but more importantly for the generations that follow you, your bloodlines, then the way to do that is here. Invest the time currency in the most valuable piece of real estate that you have, which is the 6 inches between your ears. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Any other questions? We've got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Going once, going twice. Oh, Tim?
Nothing. Sorry. It's awesome.
Yeah, just rah.
My head's exploding.
Good.
Yeah, I'll say something. I think, why I started real estate investing was simply because, generational wealth, exactly what, Mitch was just saying. And it was funny. And I just actually dropped a video a couple weeks ago called Generational Wealth. And I shared a funny story. So my daughter, she's so funny. So cute Makai goes, "Hey mom, I'm so excited to be older, and I get to be able to have a rental, and I get to do this and I get to do that." And she's super excited about real estate investing in general. And I'm like, absolutely, like this will be super fun. And she goes, "I can't wait to have an apartment and then rent out each room and then charge these people rent, and going on all the soap opera on her salary, what she's gonna do with her monies." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool. Like, absolutely, you should do that." And she goes, "But I'm gonna do it. I don't want your money. I'm gonna do it. I know you keep saying, oh, I'm hoping to give you generational wealth, but," she's like, "I don't want your money. I'm gonna do it." And I was like, okay, right? I love that. I love that for you. But I said, "You're missing the point, babe. Generational wealth actually doesn't necessarily mean money, right? It doesn't. It's actually this, right? It's your knowledge. It's what I'm going to pass on to you that is your generational wealth." And she just went, "Wait, what? So all this time you've been talking about generational wealth, it's not actually been, it's not actually been money?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, obviously that should be a perk, but no, at the end of the day, it's knowledge, because you can go out and solve these problems. And because Mitch and I have gone through so many problems, right, and have learned so many things, you get to learn from us and then take it to the next level. That's what I expect from you." And she just was like, "Oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense." And I thought, well, good, because I do want you to go do your own thing. And I don't want my kids, right, to feel like they just have everything handed to them. And I have zero desire for that, because nobody learns anything by that happening to them. But knowledge, that's power. And I think knowing what to do with money and how to keep money is even more important than just having money, right? So anyway, that's my last thought.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Such good stuff, guys. Thank you for being here today. We are going to be back next week, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure that you mark your calendars. You're just going to want to be here every week. I mean, let's be honest, right? This is good stuff. You don't want to miss it. Also, we're coming back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to be streaming live from Idaho. Dane Clark's going to be joining us. We're going to be at his ranch. So Dane was one of my first students. We're filming a story video because our stories kind of coincide from our journey from employee mindset to wealthy mindset. We kind of did together, me and Dane. So we're going to be making a YouTube video, a special video that we want to release on the YouTube channel. We're going to be up there filming that 2 weeks from today. And so we're going to be streaming. Dane's going to be our guest speaker on the call that night. He's going to be talking about business automation and how he's retired at the age of 34. Crazy, right? Because I'm 37 and I'm jealous. So how is Dane retired on his dream ranch at 34? We're going to learn. We're going to find out. It's through business automation and through business systems. And then that video of me and Dane kind of telling our story together, you're going to get to see that in about a month. That's going to come out in May. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You're going to want to ring that bell so that you get the notification when it comes out. And then, guys, what would mean a ton to me and Maeli? We love being here with you guys. We love spending our time doing it. And in a lot of cases, for many of you that are here, we don't charge for it, right? Some of you have chosen to go a little bit deeper with us and have bought education, and that's fantastic. But some of you are just here, just to get the value of being here, and that's fine with us too. But we do ask from everybody, share the YouTube channel. That's going to help us. That's going to help us spread the word of what we're trying to share here and spread the message of generational wealth. Just a simple share of a video that you like, sending it out to your friends or posting it on your social media would mean the world to us. So if you wouldn't mind doing that. Guys, that is all we have for you tonight. Please stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry to go out and do some real estate. And we're going to be back here next week. So we'll see you then. I love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.